Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance of this evening's virtual book launch of the Ruby Locket. I'm Melissa Wray. Please switch your mobile phones to silent and enjoy the party. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for coming along to my virtual launch of my brand new young adult novel, The Ruby Locket. I'm really excited that you can be involved with it, and I hope that you enjoy the journey of tonight and learn a little bit more about the path that it took me to publication. The Ruby Locket unfolds as a two-person point of view story. So we have Saxon and Karina. We meet Saxon first, where he has actually found Karina on the outskirts of the community where he lives in Nevertire. Karina is near death, and Saxon and his brother Manny take them back to their house and try and nurse her back to health. Once Karina regains consciousness, she actually has no memory of where she's come from or barely who she is. So eventually, though, she starts to remember snippets of her previous life, and as she remembers these things, she realizes that there is a story to her past and a story that she needs to uncover. Saxon himself also has a past to uncover. His parents were killed when he was a younger boy, and eventually over time he realizes that there's more to that story. So the two of them set off on a quest together to try and get answers about their pasts. And as each person's story unfolds, it also propels the other person's story forward, because they do not realise that their paths are actually connected and are paving the way towards their future. So they're two different stories that are connected to help with the key to the future. And Karina is part of that key and is a very important part of that future. I woke up one morning and I had this really vivid dream, and it was of a young man who had found a girl just lying on the ground. And I remember in the background of it was this really bright sunset. So I knew it was on dusk, and I knew that the young man was quite distressed about the girl. I didn't know from the dream whether the girl was dead or alive, but I knew that he was very interested in this girl and he wanted to find out more about her. So I scribbled down that scene, and I didn't really do much with it at the time. It was just something that stood out to me. It was something that stayed with me, and I just wrote the scene down just to sort of get it out there. A little while after that, I was looking for a new writing challenge. I was thinking about trying to come up with a new story, a new idea, and there was a writing challenge that happens every year called NaNoWriMo. It's National Novel Writing Month, and many authors take part in it, and the idea is that you challenge yourself to write one novel in the month of November. So I thought I would give this a go, and I remembered that scene that I had written down from that dream, and so I used that to begin my story, and I spent the next month writing 50 to 55,000 words, and that opening scene of that dream actually made its way into the book and is actually the opening scene of the Ruby Locket. When I started writing the Ruby Locket, I probably had three main writing challenges for this novel. The first one was writing from two-person point of view, from Saxon and Karina. I began with Saxon's point of view, mostly because of that opening scene, and then slipped into Karina's point of view. When I first wrote this novel originally, it was from third-person point of view, and as the story unfolded and when I got through draft up to draft, I ended up changing it to the first person point of view. So that was the first challenge. The second challenge was including a male protagonist point of view. So my other stories had always had female characters. So Saxon for me was new, he was male, he was someone that I had not really thought of as a character to become in one of my stories, but he was probably the one that was the strongest character in my mind when I was writing it, more so than Karina. Saxon probably came to mind and ended up being a little bit easier in some ways to write than Karina. probably because I knew what he was going to be like from the start. So I could write him a little bit easier, I guess, than Karina, who I wasn't quite sure where her storyline was going at times during the story. So because she had no memory, it was harder to sort of make those decisions for her, I guess. And the third challenge in this story was creating a dystopian world. So I had been reading lots and lots and lots of dystopian at the time when I was writing this one. So trying to create a world that was different to the normal world was a real challenge for me. I didn't want the world to be so different that people reading it wouldn't be able to connect with the things that I was saying in it. So there's lots of things within that story that will be familiar but different for the reader. So that was a lot of fun to try and do the dystopian world. And to do that, I spent hours and hours trawling the internet, looking at different sites around the world and abandoned places. As well as looking at sites around the internet, I discovered YouTube clips, which were really helpful. It gave me some idea of how these places became abandoned and where in the world these places were abandoned. I knew that for the dystopian world, I had a very clear setting with where I wanted one particular scene to take place, and it reminded me of my travels through Cappadocia in Turkey many years ago. So I probably drew on that experience to help me build that world for those particular scenes, and that was a lot of fun. It took me for a bit of a trip down memory lane on that trip, but it also allowed me to really think through that setting and that need for those people to be in that place for that particular part of the story. So the other thing that I really wanted to explore a little bit was the idea of what happens if Mother Nature is left to her own devices, if humans are removed from the equation and Mother Nature has a chance to take back over her space. So if you look on the internet, there is so many places around the world that have just been abandoned for different reasons. Communities where thousands and thousands of people used to live and have now left. And if you look at those places now, it's quite clear that Mother Nature does fight back and does take back over that natural element. So that was another aspect of it that really interested me. The Ruby Locket has been a long-term project. When I wrote it as the NaNoWriMo challenge, I really just wrote it to have a little bit of fun and just play around with some ideas and try a different type of writing style. Not long after that NaNoWriMo, I had entered a competition called the Morris Saxby Creative Development Program. So you got to submit a few chapters of your work, and if they liked it, you were selected to become involved in this 2-week mentorship program. So I was offered this 2-week mentorship program in 2015, and I got to spend 2 weeks in Melbourne, meeting with authors and illustrators and publishers and other experts in the industry, and it was the most amazing 2 weeks of my life. But at the time when I had submitted the novel, it was a different novel. It wasn't the Ruby Locket, and at the last minute I thought, well, this could be a really good opportunity to get some feedback and see if it's worth pursuing. So that's what I did. I asked, could I swap the original manuscript that I'd submitted for this one, and they agreed. And so I then spent time working with an editor who gave me a whole heap of feedback on it and suggestions, and it was something that I thought that I could keep working on over time and develop over time. So 2014 was when I wrote it, 2015 was when I had the mentor program, and then when I thought it was time or polished enough to start submitting it, I submitted it to some different areas. I got some feedback on different elements of it, and I just kept poking away, plotting away, and just making a few changes as it went along until. So I submitted probably the first 4 chapters to Odyssey Books, and I waited a couple of months and hadn't heard anything, and thought, oh, they're not interested. And then I have a routine habit of checking my junk box in my Hotmail. So this particular day I checked my junk box, and there was an email from Odyssey Books saying, we really enjoyed the first few chapters. Can you please send the whole manuscript? So, the email had been sitting there for close to a week by that point. So I quickly replied and apologised profusely for missing the email, explained what had happened, attached the manuscript, and waited another couple of months. And then eventually Michelle Lovey from Odyssey Books offered me a publishing contract, of which I jumped up and down and said, yes, please, thank you very much. Thank you once again for being here. It gives me great pleasure to begin the next part of the event.